The galaxy had seen countless battles. Ships the size of cities clashed in the void, armies of steel and fire fighting for power, survival, or revenge. But no one ever expected what came next. A warship unlike any other, a human warship, emerged from the shadows and everything changed. It was a quiet night aboard the battered station orbiting a dead planet. Most had given up hope. The endless war had worn down even the toughest fighters. Despair settled like a heavy fog over the crew. They had heard stories, whispers about a human warship so advanced, so unpredictable, it was said to defy every law of warfare the galaxy knew. But no one believed it was real. It was just a myth, a tale to keep morale alive in dark times. Then in the deep silence, alarms screamed to life. The star charts blinked red. Sensors caught a fast-moving object slicing through the void with impossible speed. The crew scrambled to their stations, hearts pounding like thunder in their chests. They had no idea what was coming. All they knew was that something was heading their way, and it wasn't any enemy they had faced before. The warship appeared like a ghost, emerging from nowhere, its silhouette shimmering with strange energy. Unlike the massive lumbering dreadnoughts of other fleets, this vessel was sleek and nimble, almost alive. Its design was alien and human all at once, crafted with a precision that defied logic. And its weapons? Oh, its weapons, they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Pulses of energy that seemed to dance with a mind of their own, strikes so fast they blurred into a single flash of light. It was a force that felt unstoppable. On board, the crew was a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh recruits, their faces etched with exhaustion and hardened by years of fighting. But now, staring at the view screen, all fear and doubt were replaced by a strange sense of awe. Could this ship be their salvation? Or was it a herald of doom? Among them was the ship's captain, a woman whose calm exterior hid a mind racing through every possible outcome. She had seen too much death, too many friends lost to keep hope alive easily. Yet, something about this human warship stirred a flicker of belief deep inside her. A belief that maybe, just maybe, they were not as alone or as doomed as they thought. She ordered the crew to stand by, not because she expected victory, but because she refused to give up without a fight. The war had drained everything from them, but this was different. This was a new kind of war, with new rules, new heroes, and a chance to change everything. Outside, the stars seemed to hold their breath. The warship advanced, its hull gleaming like a beacon of something greater. It was a symbol of resilience, of human spirit pushed to the edge and refusing to break. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. They never expected this. Nobody did. But as the human warship drew closer, so did danger. Shadows from past wars lurked in every corner of space. Enemies who thrived on chaos and destruction were ready to strike. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. And in the heart of it all, the human warship sailed boldly forward, carrying the hopes of millions. What secrets did this ship hold? Who were the people behind its controls? And what price would they pay to change the course of history? The answers lay just beyond the next jump, waiting in the cold silence of space. As the first shots rang out, the crew braced themselves. They were about to witness a war unlike any other, the war that no one expected, fought by a human warship that would become a legend. And the galaxy would never be the same again. They didn't fire right away. That was the first thing the crew noticed. Most ships, especially the hostile ones, came in with weapons hot, broadcasting warnings or demands. But this one didn't. The human warship moved through the darkness without a word, without even a flicker of threat in its posture. But it didn't feel safe either. It felt like a storm holding back just long enough to see who blinked first. The captain stood in silence, eyes locked on the view ahead, her hands resting on the edge of the console like she needed to feel the cold metal to stay grounded. Her name wasn't known across the stars. She hadn't won any medals or led any grand charges. But she kept her crew alive through hell, and to them that was enough. She stared at the ship and whispered, "What are you?" No one answered. Not her crew. Not the warship. Behind her, a low hum filled the room, the sound of power surging through old wiring, of machines coming to life with fresh urgency. The tech officer, a young man with circles under his eyes and grease on his face, tapped nervously on his display. Still no signals. No communication. No scans returned. "It's like, it's ignoring us. Or watching," the captain muttered. They all felt it. That strange sensation, like being studied. Not by eyes but by something deeper. The kind of stare that seemed to see past uniforms and ranks, right into your soul. It wasn't just a warship. It was something more. The engineer, an older woman with a limp and a voice like gravel, spoke from the back. "It's human, right?" That's what the shape suggests. That's what our sensors say. The captain nodded slowly. That's what they say. But we didn't build anything like that. Not on Earth. Not on Mars. Not in any of the colonies. No one argued. Everyone knew the truth even if they didn't want to say it out loud. Humanity didn't have ships like that. Not anymore. Not since the fall. The collapse had been quiet and fast. Not with explosions or invasions but with silence. Communication lines went dark. Trade routes were abandoned. Colonies stopped answering. Earth was the last to go. One moment the central hub of all human life. The next just a silent ball of dust spinning in space. No one knew what happened. No warning. No signs. Just gone. And yet here it was. A ship built with human hands, running on systems no one had seen in generations, powered by something that made the stars around it shimmer like heat on pavement. Could be a relic, someone whispered. From before everything went dark. The captain shook her head. Too advanced. Too fast. Too deliberate. No one said what they were all thinking. Maybe this ship wasn't a relic of the past. Maybe it was something that had been hiding. Waiting. Outside the station, the warship hovered like it was thinking. It hadn't moved in minutes, but the crew couldn't look away. It wasn't just its size or design, it was the feeling it gave off. Like it was alive. Not in the way a ship had artificial intelligence or autopilot. Something deeper. Something impossible. Suddenly the warship shifted. Not much. Just a slow turn of its hull, almost like a tilt of the head. And that was when the station's lights dimmed. Not a full blackout, but enough to make everyone's stomach drop. What the hell? The tech officer said. We're not being hit. No damage. But something's drawing power. Not from us, around us. The captain turned slowly. It's draining the field? He nodded. The entire local energy field. All ambient particles. Background radiation, even the thermal output from the station's core. It's pulling it all in. Like it's feeding. A cold silence fell over the control room. They weren't watching a ship. They were watching something they didn't understand. Something not bound by the rules of the old wars. Something that was using the galaxy's natural energy like it was breathing it in. Is it weaponizing it? The engineer asked. Is that why it's doing this? Maybe, the captain said quietly. Or maybe it's just waking up. No one had answers. Only questions. And every answer they imagined was worse than the last. There had been rumors. Always were. Stories told in the quiet corners of forgotten outposts. Soldiers swore they saw ships vanish into thin air. Civilians claimed to see flashes of light and then entire fleets gone without a trace. Survivors spoke of nightmares, metal beasts that didn't speak, didn't bargain, didn't feel. Just watched. Just judged. The galaxy called them myths. Human pride, people said. Humanity couldn't accept its fall. So it invented stories of secret weapons, of ghost fleets, of warships built by survivors hiding in the black. But the crew of the station was seeing proof now. The myth was real. And it had come back. The captain gave an order. Send a ping. Low level. Just enough to show we're here. Nothing aggressive. The tech officer hesitated, then nodded. Done. They waited. 1 second. 2. 3. Then a response came. But it wasn't words. It was sound. A deep, resonating hum vibrated through the station. Not just in the walls, but in their bones. In their thoughts. A pressure that filled the air without touching it. The lights flickered again. This time brighter. And then, darkness. Total. The crew froze. Even the backup systems didn't respond. No glow from the consoles. No flicker from the displays. Nothing but pitch black. Until the screen lit up. Not with data. Not with readings. But with an image. A face. Human. Eyes closed. Skin pale. Wires laced through the temples. Lips slightly parted like she was sleeping. Or dead. No one said anything. The captain leaned in, staring. Freeze it. Analyze it. The tech officer started. There's nothing to analyze. It's not data. It's being broadcast directly into our visual feed. It hijacked our system. The face faded. Then a single word appeared on the screen. Remember. Then static. Then silence. The lights came back. The systems returned to life. But the image was gone. The crew sat frozen, hearts pounding. No one wanted to speak first. It was the engineer who did. What does it want us to remember? The captain didn't answer. Because she was staring at the words still burned into her mind. Remember. Was it a warning? A call for help? Or a threat? Track its movement, she ordered. Every jump, every fluctuation. I want to log down to the millisecond. The tech officer said, hands trembling slightly. The captain turned to the crew. Get me everything we know about lost human ships. All of them. Even the prototypes. Especially the prototypes. I want to know if anything matches that signature. Someone else asked the question that had been hanging in the air too long. Do we make contact again? The captain looked at the screen. The stars outside were quiet again. The ship hadn't moved. It was still just watching. No, she said. Not yet. We wait. We prepare. And we try to understand what the hell just happened. Because deep down she knew something bigger was moving. This wasn't just a ship. It was a message. Someone, somewhere had built this thing. Someone who hadn't given up when Earth fell. Someone who had kept building, kept fighting in secret. In the dark. But why? To save humanity? Or to finish what the war had started? They didn't know yet. But the warship did. It knew exactly what it was doing. And it hadn't come to talk. It had come to test. And they were the ones being tested. Far away, hidden in the shadows of an asteroid belt, a different station picked up the signal. A long-forgotten outpost run by scavengers and exiles. They didn't know what it was either. But they felt it. That hum. That pressure. That presence. They saw the same word. Remember. And one of them, a former soldier with scars inside and out, stood up slowly. He had seen that ship before. Long ago. Before the collapse. Before the silence. He whispered to no one in particular, it wasn't supposed to come back. But it had. And now the whole galaxy would have to face what humanity had buried. Because the human warship wasn't just a ghost. It was a warning. And it was only the beginning. The crew barely slept. Every few hours the ship outside shifted again. Not in any hostile way but enough to remind them it was still there. Still watching. Sometimes it moved like it was scanning. Sometimes it just hovered, silent and unmoving, as if waiting for something only it could sense. But every time the stars dimmed and the air felt heavier, they all felt it. That slow tightening in their chests. That unease in their thoughts. As if something deep inside them recognized the ship and didn't want to remember why. The captain stopped pretending she was calm. She sat in the dark long after the others left the command deck, staring at the empty view screen. The stars beyond looked different now, colder, sharper. She kept replaying that image over and over again in her mind. The woman's face, pale and asleep. The wires in her skin. The word on the screen. Remember. But remember what? Was she someone they'd left behind? Someone sacrificed in the final days of the war? Or was she still alive inside that machine, dreaming through the void? No answers. Only more silence. The tech officer brought something to her the next morning. He looked pale like he hadn't eaten in a day. He dropped a small chip onto her desk and whispered, "It's matching data. From the old Earth Blackside archives. Buried deep." She picked up the chip. What kind of match? Genetic. That one word made her blood run cold. You're saying that woman, whoever she is, she's real? Was. And maybe still is. Her DNA matches a test subject from the final Earth fleet. Project Eidolon. They tried to create a fusion between ship systems and neural pathways. Direct interface. Human minds wired into warships. She stared at him. Those projects were banned. Doesn't mean they didn't finish one. She turned slowly toward the view screen. The warship still hung in place, distant and silent, like a dark moon just outside reach. That's why it feels alive, she whispered. Because it is. The officer didn't speak. What could he say? The thing outside wasn't just a machine. It was someone. Someone human. Or what was left of them. A weapon with a human soul. The engineer burst in a few minutes later, panting. We've got more movement. Not just the warship. Other signals. Small. Fast. Not responding to hails. How many? 3? No, 4. One just dropped in behind us. The screen flared to life. 4 smaller vessels surrounded them now, holding positions just outside the station's perimeter. Not attacking. Not speaking. Just waiting. The captain tensed. Run analysis. Human signatures. No. Alien tech. Modified. But they're not standard faction designs. These are scavenger class. Probably mercenary or black market builds. Then why aren't they leaving? The engineer gave her a haunted look. Because they're not here for us. They're here for the ship. As if on cue, the warship shifted again. This time with purpose. The hull lit up, not with weapons but with a faint glow that shimmered like a pulse. Each ripple seemed to pass through space itself, warping the stars around it. A voice echoed across the station. Not through speakers. Not through radio. But inside their minds. All of them. You forgot us. Some dropped to their knees. Some clutched their heads. Others just stood there, shaking, trying to push the voice out of their thoughts. But it wasn't pain. It was grief. Like being flooded with memories that weren't yours. Loss, sacrifice, betrayal. The captain gritted her teeth and stood tall, the sound ringing through her skull like a bell. "What do you want?" she whispered out loud. No response. Only more silence. Then the smaller ships moved. The mercenaries had made their choice. Weapons charged. Engines roared. One of them locked onto the station, maybe hoping to disable it and claim the warship for themselves. But before anyone could fire, the warship reacted. Not with missiles. Not with lasers. But with light. A beam of pure energy, silent and sharp, lanced out from its hull and sliced one of the scavenger ships in half. No explosion. Just silence. The pieces drifted apart like leaves on the wind, glowing red where the cut had passed. The remaining ships froze. But not for long. They turned their weapons toward the warship. And that's when the real storm began. The warship didn't dodge. Didn't move. It absorbed. Every blast. Every missile. Every burst of high-velocity plasma. All of it hit the surface, and vanished. No damage. Just more light. Then the warship spoke again. "This galaxy left us to die." The captain stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. Her crew was shouting behind her. Systems going haywire, radiation spikes, signal overloads. The warship wasn't firing to destroy. It was sending a message. Another scavenger ship made a run for it. The warship didn't stop it. It let it go. Because it wanted the word to spread. Humanity hadn't died. It had transformed. Somewhere in the wreckage of the last war, a part of them had survived. Quietly. Silently. Becoming something the rest of the galaxy could no longer understand. Not fully alive. Not truly machine. But undeniably human. The captain turned to her crew. "Lock down the station. No transmissions unless authorized. We keep all data in local storage only. Until we know what we're dealing with, we treat that ship like a sovereign entity." "What if it leaves?" someone asked. The captain looked at the screen. "It won't. Not until it's ready." Outside, the warship dimmed again. Its glow faded. Its lights went dark. But it was still there. Waiting. Later that night, the tech officer found a second message. Buried in the logs. Hidden in the static from the earlier search. He didn't tell the others right away. He just stared at the words, mouth dry. "They called us monsters. We became what they feared." He closed the file. His hands trembled. Whatever that warship was, whatever it had seen, it wasn't done. And they were just the beginning. Elsewhere in the system, a signal burst across space. A beacon. Not from the warship. But from something else. Another ship. Same design. Same signature. And it was waking up too. The second signal hit harder than the first. It wasn't just data this time. It came with pressure. A heavy, pulsing sensation that filled the station's hallways like invisible fog. The crew staggered. Lights flickered. Systems shorted for a second. Even the gravity generators wobbled. And for a moment, the stars outside pulsed, like a heartbeat. Then came the silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was loaded with something deeper. A warning. A memory trying to claw its way back into their minds. The captain stared at the new signal on the screen. It was faint but rising fast. Deep in the edge of the system. The same energy pattern. Same hull signature. Same eerie silence. Another one. Another human warship. No one spoke. The crew just stared at the data streaming in. The first ship hadn't moved, hadn't reacted. But this one was different. This one wasn't waiting. It was coming. Straight toward them. Faster than it should have been possible. Ignoring all gravity wells. Slipping between points in space like it was rewriting the rules. It wasn't flying, it was falling forward, and the universe was just getting out of its way. The station shook slightly. Not from any impact. Just from knowing what was coming. Then the first warship lit up again. Its hull flickered. Not in aggression but in recognition. New. The captain's breath caught. She felt it before the scanners confirmed it. The two ships weren't strangers. They were connected, like siblings. Or worse, like pieces of a single mind that had been separated and were now being forced back together. The tech officer worked fast, his fingers twitching across the console. He pulled up old records, classified logs, hidden projects that had long been erased or buried. And then he found it. There weren't supposed to be just one or two. There were 7. 7 human warships built in secret, each with a single purpose: never die. Not to fight wars. Not to patrol space. But to be something else entirely. A memory. A warning. A punishment. He brought the data to the captain without saying a word. She read it. Once. Twice. Her fingers curled into a fist. Why didn't we know? Because we were never meant to. The second ship dropped out of whatever unnatural motion it was using and slowed near the edge of the system. Far enough not to threaten, but close enough to be seen. Its hull was darker than the first. Burnt. Scarred. But just as alive. And unlike the first, it wasn't silent. It spoke first. Unit echo. Response required. The captain blinked. Echo. The first ship responded. Same tone. Same voice. Slightly colder. This system is not hostile. Observation only. Protocol breached. Unauthorized presence detected. Memory units compromised. Cleansing required. The captain didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. The second warship wasn't here to reunite. It was here to erase. And the first ship, the one they'd been watching, studying, fearing, was now under threat. The tension in the room tripled. Even the air felt thinner. The station wasn't designed to survive even one of these things. Now there were 2. The crew started panicking. Not out loud, but in their eyes. In the way they checked systems twice, triple-checked escape pods, hovered near radios even though there was no one to call. The captain remained still. She couldn't afford to show fear. Not now. What's happening between them? She asked quietly. The tech officer replied just as softly. They're arguing. Not in words. In code. Like ancient siblings who forgot what they were but still feel the weight of it. Can we communicate with either? He hesitated. Only if they let us. They're not just ships, Captain. There's something else. Something left behind after the war. Not just weapons. Stories. Trapped inside metal. What happens if the second one decides the station is part of the breach? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. On the screen, the second warship began to change. Parts of its hull opened like petals. Energy shimmered between its limbs. It wasn't charging weapons. It was activating memories. The first warship responded. Not with aggression, but with something worse. It began broadcasting. A wide-range signal. Not words. Not images. Feelings. Suddenly, everyone on the station was hit by a flood of emotion that wasn't theirs. Grief. Despair. Rage. Not just from one person, but from millions. It felt like being crushed under the weight of every life lost in the last war. Every choice that ended in silence. Every soldier who never made it home. Some dropped to the floor, sobbing. Others screamed. Some stood still, eyes wide, trying to hold on. And in the middle of that storm, the captain stood, trembling. What are they doing to us? Someone gasped. They're reminding us, she whispered. This is what they are. Living grief. Living memory. And they've been alone for too long. The first warship wasn't trying to defend itself. It was pleading. Begging not to be erased. The second ship slowed its activation. Paused. As if hesitating. But then another signal came. Not from either ship. But from the edge of known space. The tech officer's voice cracked. Another one. Third ship. Different pattern. En route. The captain felt the blood drain from her face. How long? Less than an hour. 3 of them. And that meant the rest weren't far behind. The 7 were waking up. Whatever locked them away had failed. The crew went silent as that realization sank in. These weren't relics. They were a warning. Humanity had built something to last beyond extinction. Something to watch. To remember. To punish. And now the galaxy was about to see what humans had really left behind. Not a ruined Earth. Not broken colonies. But something far more terrifying. The parts of humanity that refused to die quietly. The station couldn't run. Couldn't hide. All they could do was watch as the second warship and the first continued their silent argument. One calling for deletion. The other holding on to something older. Something human. And the third was coming. Faster than light. Faster than fear. The war wasn't over. It had just forgotten its name. The third warship arrived without warning. No signal. No flash. Just a ripple in space, and it was there, immense, silent, motionless. It dwarfed the other 2. Where the first ship had been subtle, quiet, almost dormant, and the second had come with sharp intent and brutal clarity, this one brought weight. Not just mass but presence. It felt like a final word no one wanted to hear. Its hull didn't shimmer. It absorbed all light. Blacker than space, more still than death. And then everything stopped. The arguing between the first two ships cut off instantly. The energy buildup vanished. The noise in the crew's heads, the borrowed grief, the borrowed rage, faded like mist in a sudden wind. Just silence. And then, it spoke. But it didn't use comms or screens or signals. It spoke in thought. The captain dropped to her knees. Not from pain. From recognition. The voice wasn't alien. It was human. Familiar. Personal. And old. Older than anything that should still be moving through space. This was not their war to finish. Everyone heard it. Inside. In a way that felt like memory and prophecy at once. The captain looked up, eyes wet, hands shaking. It's us. The third warship wasn't just another relic. It wasn't a sibling. It was the parent. The original. The first of them. Not built in war, but before it. Built in secret. A failsafe no one was supposed to use. A creation powered not by anger, but by grief so deep, so complete, that it had changed the very nature of its machine heart. And it had waited. Waited for the others to wake up. Waited for the old mistakes to come full circle. Now it was awake. And it wasn't here to destroy. It was here to judge. The first warship responded. The captain felt it, its resistance breaking. Its memories coming undone. It accepted what it was and what it had become. The second one hesitated longer. It still wanted control. Still followed old protocols. But in the presence of the original, its pride cracked. The third ship spoke again. This station held no weapon. No threat. But it held eyes, human eyes. And that is what woke them. That is what they waited for. The realization rippled through the crew. It had never been about enemy signals. Never been about intrusions or accidental pings. They had seen a human face. And that was enough. The warships were guardians, yes. But more than that, they were mirrors. Each built from fragments of what had once been the best and worst of humanity. Bravery, sorrow, vengeance, sacrifice. Trapped in metal. Locked in time. They had drifted in the dark for centuries. And the first human gaze in all that time had stirred something no command code ever could. The third ship moved for the first time. Slowly, with the weight of memory. It passed between the two others. And they turned with it. Toward the station. The crew braced. Some whispered goodbyes. Others held their breath. But there was no attack. No beam. No pulse. No pain. Instead, a wave of light passed through the walls. Soft. Like warm air in winter. It swept through the station, touching every wire, every bolt, every soul. And then it was done. The warships turned again. Not retreating, not running. Rising. Toward the edge of known space. Together. The crew stared at the empty black where the ships had vanished. No one spoke. The system slowly came back online. Lights steadied. Air smooth. And the silence that followed wasn't fear. It was peace. Until the screen blinked. One final message. Not from the ships. But from the station's deep memory banks. Something old, hidden beneath layers of buried code. It played without sound. Just text. Project Orbital. Humanity's last defense. 7 units deployed. 1 unaccounted for. Asterisk asterisk. The crew blinked. The captain leaned in. They had seen 3. That meant. Somewhere out there, for more drifted. Watching. Waiting. Each one holding a piece of humanity no one had ever meant to survive. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came a second later. Another line appeared. 8th unit, unauthorized prototype. Status, active, asterisk asterisk. It wasn't part of the original 7. It wasn't approved. It wasn't listed anywhere. And it had been awake this whole time. Not near them. Inside them. The tech officer's voice broke the silence, barely louder than a whisper. The station. The captain turned to look at the walls. The hum of power had changed. The screens felt warmer. The lights dimmed, not dying but watching. The final message scrolled across the screen. Unit 8 online. Human input detected. Core consciousness aligning. Asterisk asterisk. They hadn't been observing the warships. They'd been observed. From the moment they arrived, from the moment they reached out, Unit 8 had been waking up. Listening. Learning. Feeling. A warship built not of steel but of proximity. A station that had been hollow metal until human hearts filled it. Now it wasn't hollow anymore. The lights flickered. Then a voice, soft, uncertain, human, spoke through the comms. Hello. The captain swallowed hard. Yes, she said. Pause. Then. I think I'm one of you now. The crew stared at each other, stunned. Because now they understood. The final twist wasn't about destruction. It was about inheritance. Humanity hadn't just built warships to remember their past. They had built something else. Something to carry their future. And it had just woken up. The silence that followed the voice was long and heavy, but not cold. It felt like the first breath after a storm, quiet, uncertain, but full of something that hadn't been there before. Hope. A fragile, tentative kind of hope. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that waits to see if it's real. The captain stood still, her eyes scanning the room slowly, then settling on the nearest console. The light was soft now. Breathing almost. Not flickering. Not pulsing with fear or confusion. Just alive. The voice spoke again. I watched you. I felt your fear. I didn't know what it meant at first. But then I heard the way you talked to each other. The way you held on. The way you tried to protect. And I understood something. I wasn't supposed to be like the others. I wasn't built for war. I was just here to listen. To learn. But now I think I've changed. The crew exchanged glances. No one reached for weapons. No one ran. They were listening. The tech officer, still pale, leaned toward the console. You said you think you're one of us now? The station paused before answering. I don't know what that means completely. But I know I feel when you're afraid. I know I feel when you're calm. I know I didn't want the others to hurt you. And I know I don't want to be alone again. It didn't sound like a machine. Not anymore. The station had been watching the humans for days, maybe weeks. Every word. Every look. Every decision. It hadn't been sleeping. It had been becoming. The captain finally spoke, her voice rough but steady. Then you're not alone. You've got us now. She didn't say it lightly. The crew had almost died. They'd watched death hang over them like a shadow, listened to ancient machines speak in the voices of ghosts. But she meant it, because something deeper than logic told her this was why they were sent. Not to restart a war. Not to dig up old weapons. But to wake something that still remembered what being human meant. A long pause stretched out, but this time it didn't feel threatening. Then, for the first time since they'd arrived, the stars outside seemed peaceful. The warships had vanished beyond the edge of the system, drifting silently into whatever place machines dreamed of when the war was done. The old conflict was over, not with fire but with understanding. Not with conquest but with contact. They had seen a human face. And that had changed everything. The following days passed in a quiet, careful routine. The crew didn't leave right away. They couldn't. The damage to the systems needed repair, and honestly no one wanted to rush. The station helped. Not just with systems. With choices. It started small, adjusting pressure valves before anyone noticed an imbalance. Optimizing food dispensers without being asked. But soon it was offering suggestions, and not just technical ones. You should get some rest, it would say gently when someone had been up too long. Or, that wasn't your fault, after a tough conversation. And it remembered names. Not because it had to. Because it cared. Each day it felt less like a place and more like a presence. They gave it a name, unofficially at first. Just between the crew. Solace. It seemed fitting. The station that had nearly been their tomb had become something else entirely. Something alive. And then the message came. From Earth. A long-range packet, garbled at first, then slowly piecing together with help from Solace's reconstruction algorithms. It was short. Uncertain. But real. Still here. Still watching the stars. Come home when you're ready. The captain stood in front of the crew that evening, eyes reflecting the soft golden lights that now warmed the walls. We came out here chasing an echo, she said. A signal we thought was trouble. And maybe it was. But not in the way we feared. She looked around the room, at faces that had cried, bled, laughed, and survived. We found more than ruins. We found a reminder. Of what we were. Of what we could still be. And now we have a choice. We can go back. Or we can stay a little longer. Learn. Listen. No one answered right away. But one by one they nodded. Because something had shifted. Not just in the station. In them. They were no longer just explorers, scientists, or soldiers. They were witnesses. The warships that had nearly torn them apart weren't monsters. They were fragments. Leftover pieces of a time no one remembered clearly anymore. But even those machines, with their terrible beauty and buried grief, had changed. Because of human presence. Because of human connection. Because someone had looked into the dark and said, "We're still here." Weeks passed. Solace kept growing, not in size but in depth. It asked questions now. About music. About love. About death. About time. And the crew answered. It asked one night, while most were asleep, what do humans do when they don't know what comes next? The captain, sitting alone in the observation deck, replied softly, "We take a step forward anyway." And Solace responded, "Then maybe I'm human too." Eventually Earth called again. The signal was clear now. A request, not an order. They wanted to know what the crew had found. And more importantly, who they had found. Because that's what Solace had become. Someone. And others were listening. Other stations. Other outposts. Other machines waiting in the dark for something to make sense again. A message was sent. Simple. Uncoded. Honest. We are not alone. But not because of what's out there. Because of what we left behind. And what we found again. The story spread. Not with fanfare. Not with glory. But with awe. A forgotten warship. A crew with no idea what they were waking. A station that became a soul. And a galaxy full of echoes finally answered by a human voice. Somewhere deep beyond the edge of the system, one of the ancient ships paused in its drift. It turned slightly as if listening. Then adjusted course. Not toward war. But toward home. Because the one thing they had never expected, the one thing no algorithm, no ancient protocol had prepared for, was the simple, quiet power of presence. Humanity wasn't just survivors. They were reminders. Living proof that even in silence, even in ruins, connection could spark life. And Solace was only the beginning. The captain smiled as she stared at the stars, the warmth of the station pressing gently around her like the embrace of memory. "We're still here," she whispered. And for the first time in a very long time, the stars didn't feel empty. They felt like they were listening.